This July, Womanica has teamed up with Nike to tell the stories of elite athletes from history to today. We're celebrating the women who performed physical and mental feats in sports. We're talking about athletes. For stories of women who overcame societal barriers, personal struggles, and fierce competition to pursue their dreams of glory. Listen to Womanica all month long, wherever you get your podcasts. Hello. From Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month, we're celebrating women who performed physical and mental feats in sports. They overcame societal barriers, personal struggles, and fierce competition to pursue their dreams of glory. We're talking about athletes. Today, we're talking about the first, and to this day only, American woman to win the World Table Tennis Championships. And she did it when she was just a teenager. Let's talk about Ruth Aarons. In 1918, Ruth was born in Stamford, Connecticut, to parents in show business. Her mother was a light opera singer, and her father was a Broadway producer. The family had homes in New York City and Connecticut. As a child, Ruth dreamed she would be a fashion designer. All that changed when she was a teenager, and a storm blew her fate in another direction. One fateful day, she was playing tennis on the rooftop of a hotel in Manhattan. Suddenly, dark clouds rolled in, the skies opened, and it began to rain. So Ruth hurried inside and looked around for something else to do. In the basement, she discovered table tennis. Ruth was intrigued. She put down her tennis racket, picked up a paddle, and her life was forever changed. This was an origin story she would go on to tell over and over again. Ruth had a natural talent and immediately began competing in tournaments. That spring, she competed in her first national match and got 5th place. She hadn't even reached her 15th birthday. Later that year, Ruth won her school table tennis tournament, and she enjoyed the feeling. She doubled down and worked to improve her technique, learning new grips and playing styles, and she just kept winning. Ruth was a vision. She was tiny and sprite-like, bouncing around the table at just 5 feet 2 inches. She wore big hairbands that held back her cropped bob, which bounced with every hit. And she didn't abandon her love for fashion. She fluttered around the table in crisp white tennis shoes and wide-legged, high-waisted trousers with deep hip pockets in order to hold more balls. Eventually, she started designing her own clothes for the sport. After just a year of playing, she leapfrogged into the big leagues. She won tournaments in the U.S. and became known as one of the best defensive players. Hovering close to the table, she could return any shot that came her way. She claimed she tap danced to maintain her nimble footwork, and she only practiced against men. Ruth won the U.S. National Championship for the second time in 1935. She was so good she was tapped to represent the U.S. at the World Table Tennis Tournament, and even bumped a male player from the team. Now, this teenage sweetheart was off to compete overseas. She sailed across the Atlantic to play in the 1936 World Tournament in Czechoslovakia. It was held in Prague in a massive basement bomb-proof concert hall. Attendees filled the chaotic space. When Ruth's matches started, the Czechs initially rooted against her, quite loudly. But if an actual explosion happened, Ruth wouldn't have noticed. Her eyes were fixated on the ball, whizzing back and forth between her and her opponent. Ruth played so well against her Czech opponent, Marie Ketnerova, that when Ruth won, the Czechs erupted because it was such a good show. She eventually won the championship against Astrid Krebsbach, who played for Nazi Germany. Ruth refused to shake Astrid's hand at the end, stating, "I am Jewish." At 17 years old, Ruth was a world champion. She won singles, doubles, and team medals. What she found really hard was signing all of the tiny table tennis balls for fans. She was the only American to win gold at the World Table Tennis Championship that year. When Ruth headed back to the States, her show business roots kicked in. She performed at supper clubs as evening entertainment. Her first show was at the Rainbow Room on the 65th floor of what was then known as the RCA building. Apparently, anyone in the audience who could beat Ruth got a bottle of champagne. The bottle was never opened. In 1937, she returned to Europe to play in a number of international tournaments, which complicated her career. She traveled through Nazi Germany on her way to play at the World Championships in Austria. During the final match, the tournament judges enforced a new time limit rule. The match was stopped short, and neither player got gold. The title was vacated, and they were both disqualified. Ruth's American team was outraged and had assumed that she would maintain her World Championship title from the year before. Then in England, things further went awry. Ruth had set up a tour of commercial performances in nightclubs. But she found herself tangled up in new compensation policies in different governing jurisdictions. So Ruth was suspended from playing for a month and 10 days. This was the beginning of the end, which happened as quickly as Ruth's rise. She retired from competitions at the age of 18, but continued to play table tennis at theaters and nightclubs. A few years later, she put down her paddle altogether. She became an entertainment manager instead, signing big names like David Cassidy. In 1966, the U.S. Table Tennis Hall of Fame was founded, and Ruth was one of the first inductees. Ruth died in 1980 at the age of 61. After her death, the head of the Hall of Fame launched a campaign to revisit Ruth's 1937 match disqualification. As a result, she was posthumously awarded the co-champion title. Even today, Ruth maintains her record as the only American world singles table tennis champion. All month, we're talking about athletes. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. Talk to you tomorrow. This July, Womanica has teamed up with Nike to tell the stories of elite athletes from history to today. We're celebrating the women who performed physical and mental feats in sports. We're talking about athletes. For stories of women who overcame societal barriers, personal struggles, and fierce competition to pursue their dreams of glory, listen to Womanica all month long, wherever you get your podcasts.
Residents at Brightview Senior Living Communities enjoy enhanced possibilities, independence, and choice. Brightview Dulles Corner in Herndon and Brightview, Great Falls, offer vibrant senior independent living, assisted living, and memory care services through various daily programs and cultural events. Chef-prepared meals, safety and security, transportation, resort-style amenities, and high-quality care. Everything you need is here. Discover more at brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal housing opportunity.
In 2009, Mitrice Richardson was released from the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, and she never made it home. Nearly a year later, Mitrice's remains were found in a canyon 6 miles from the station. Her death is Malibu's greatest unsolved mystery. I'm Dana Goodyear. In Lost Hills, Dark Canyon, what happened to Mitrice Richardson? Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Parents around the world choose the Sleep Tight Stories podcast to help their children fall asleep with ease and stay asleep longer. Earlier bedtimes means you get happier children and a bit more time to yourself at the end of a busy day. Listen to Sleep Tight Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For a bedtime routine you'll miss when they're grown, Sleep Tight Stories.